Chances are you've heard people talking about index funds. Maybe a friend mentioned them, or you saw something online about passive investing. And you thought, what exactly is that? And should I be doing it? Well, you're in the right place. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about index fund investing. And I promise, no financial jargon without explanations, no assuming you already know stuff, and absolutely no BS. Just straight talk about what index funds are, how they work, and whether they might be right for you. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what index funds are, why so many people swear by them, how to actually get started, and importantly, what the downsides are. Because yes, there are some. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive in. All right, first things first. What exactly is an index fund? Here's the simplest way I can put it. An index fund is a type of investment that automatically buys a little piece of a whole bunch of different companies, all at once. Instead of you having to pick individual stocks, like deciding whether to buy Apple or Microsoft or Tesla, an index fund does the heavy lifting for you by buying small pieces of hundreds or even thousands of companies. But here's the key part. It doesn't just buy random companies. It buys all the companies in a specific index. Now, what's an index? Think of it like a list. The most famous one is the S&P 500, which is basically a list of the 500 biggest companies in America. Companies like Apple, Amazon, Google, Johnson & Johnson, the heavy hitters. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you're buying a tiny slice of all 500 of those companies in one purchase. There are other indexes too. The total stock market index includes basically every publicly traded company in the US, big, small, everything. There are international indexes, bond indexes, and more niche ones. But for now, just understand an index is a list, and an index fund buys everything on that list. Here's an analogy that might help. Imagine you're at a smoothie bar. You could spend time picking individual fruits, like, I want mango but not papaya, maybe some strawberries but definitely no banana. Or you could just order the everything smoothie that has a bit of every fruit they offer. An index fund is like that everything smoothie for investing. So you might be wondering, how is this different from just buying stocks regularly? Great question. When most people think about investing in the stock market, they picture someone choosing specific companies to invest in. That's called active investing or stock picking. You're actively deciding, I think this company will do great, so I'm putting my money here. Index fund investing is called passive investing. You're not trying to pick winners. You're not saying, I think Apple will beat Microsoft. You're basically saying, I'm going to own a piece of the entire market and ride the overall wave. There's also something called actively managed mutual funds. These are funds where a professional money manager picks stocks for you, trying to beat the market. They might charge you 1% or more of your money every year for this service. Index funds are different. They're not trying to beat the market. They're trying to match it. And because they're not paying expensive fund managers to make decisions, they charge way less. Some index funds charge as little as 0.03% per year. That difference might not sound like much, but over decades, it's huge. Okay, so why do so many people, including really smart investors, recommend index funds? Let me give you some real talk here. Most people who try to pick individual stocks or who pay fund managers to pick stocks for them don't beat the market. In fact, studies show that over 90% of actively managed funds fail to beat the market over 15-year periods. Think about that. Professional investors with teams of analysts and fancy computer models can't consistently beat the simple strategy of just buying everything. Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, has repeatedly said that most people should just invest in low-cost index funds. He literally won a $1 million bet against the hedge fund manager by proving that a simple S&P 500 index fund would outperform a collection of fancy hedge funds over 10 years. And he was right. Here's why index funds work so well. 1. They're diversified. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. If one company in your index fund tanks, you've got hundreds of others. Sure, you won't hit it big if you happen to pick the next Amazon, but you also won't lose everything if you accidentally invest in the next Enron. 2. They're cheap. Those low fees I mentioned, they matter enormously over time. If you invest $10,000 and it grows at 8% per year for 30 years with a 1% fee, you'd end up with about $76,000. With a 0.03% fee, you'd have about $98,000. That's $22,000 you keep just by choosing a cheaper fund. 3. They're simple. You don't need to read financial statements, follow earnings calls, or watch the stock market every day. You buy the fund, hold it for the long term, and that's pretty much it. 4. They're transparent. You know exactly what you own. An S&P 500 fund owns the S&P 500. No surprises, no fund manager suddenly deciding to bet big on something. Now, let's talk about what index funds aren't great at, because I promised you transparency. First, they're boring, like really boring. You won't have exciting stories at parties about how you picked a stock that tripled. You won't feel like a genius investor. You're basically accepting average market returns, which historically have been pretty good, around 10% per year for the US market over the long term, but still, they're average. Second, you can't beat the market. By definition, if you're matching the market, you're not beating it. Some people get lucky or are genuinely skilled at picking stocks that outperform. With index funds, you're giving up that possibility. Third, you still go down when the market goes down. In 2008, the market crashed and index funds crashed right along with it. You're broadly diversified, yes, but you're not protected from market-wide disasters. Fourth, they require patience. Index fund investing is a long-term game. We're talking decades, ideally. If you need your money in 2 years, index funds aren't the right choice because the market could be down in 2 years. This strategy works because historically, over long periods, the market goes up. But short-term, it's bumpy. All right, so let's say you're interested. How do you actually do this? Step 1. You need a brokerage account. This is just an account that lets you buy investments. Popular options include Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab. There are also newer apps like Robinhood or Webull, though I'd personally stick with the established companies for index fund investing. Most of these are free to open, and many have no minimum investment anymore. You can literally start with $50 if that's what you have. Step 2. Decide which index fund to buy. For most beginners, I'd suggest starting simple. If you want broad U.S. market exposure, look for a total stock market index fund. At Vanguard, that's VTI or VTSAX. At Fidelity, it's FSKAX. If you want international exposure too, consider splitting between a U.S. fund and an international stock market index fund. The letters and numbers can be confusing, but here's the thing. If you're looking at index funds from reputable companies like Vanguard or Fidelity, and the expense ratio, called the expense ratio, is under 0.10%, you're probably fine. Don't overthink it. Step 3. Decide how much to invest. Here's my advice. Only invest money you won't need for at least 5 years, preferably 10 or more. This is not your emergency fund. This is not your house down payment money if you're buying next year. A common approach is to invest a set amount every month, maybe $100, maybe $500, whatever works for your budget. This is called dollar cost averaging, and it means you're buying when the market is high and when the market is low, which averages out over time. Step 4. Actually buy the fund. In your brokerage account, you'll search for the fund using those letters I mentioned, like VTI. Enter how much you want to invest and click buy. That's it. Seriously. Step 5, the hard part. Do nothing. Just let it sit. Don't check it every day. Don't panic when it goes down. Don't get too excited when it goes up. The whole strategy depends on staying invested for the long haul. Let me share some mistakes I see beginners make. Mistake 1, trying to time the market. People think, oh, the market seems high, I'll wait for it to drop. But here's the thing, nobody can consistently predict market movements. Time in the market beats timing the market, as they say. If you're investing for 30 years, whether you bought in January or June of 2024 will barely matter. Mistake 2, panicking and selling when things drop. This is the big one. The market will drop. It will drop a lot sometimes. In March 2020, it dropped over 30% in a few weeks. People who sold locked in those losses. People who held on, or better yet, kept buying, recovered and then some. Mistake 3, making it too complicated. Some people get paralyzed trying to find the perfect allocation between US stocks, international stocks, bonds, small cap, large cap. Look, for a beginner, just picking one broad index fund is fine. You can get fancier later if you want, but simple works. Mistake 4, paying attention to financial news too much. CNBC and financial Twitter are designed to make you feel like you need to do something. With index investing, the right move most of the time is to do nothing. Breaking news usually doesn't change your long-term strategy. Mistake 5, not considering tax advantage accounts. Before you invest in a regular brokerage account, make sure you're taking advantage of accounts like a 401k at work, especially if they match your contributions. That's free money. Or an IRA. These give you tax benefits that can significantly boost your returns. The long-term mindset. Here's the thing about index fund investing that I really want you to understand. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-rich-slowly plan. If you invest $500 a month in an index fund starting at age 25, and you get average market returns of around 10% per year, by age 65, you'd have around $3.2 million. That's the power of compound interest over time. But it requires patience. It requires ignoring the noise. It requires continuing to invest even when the market is scary. The people who do well with index funds are the ones who set up automatic investments and then kind of forget about them. They check in once a year, maybe rebalance if needed, and otherwise live their lives. Compare that to people who are constantly buying and selling, trying to chase hot stocks, panicking during downturns. Those people statistically do worse, and they're way more stressed. So is index fund investing right for you? It's probably a good fit if you want to invest for long-term goals like retirement, you don't want to spend a lot of time managing investments, you're okay with average market returns, you can handle seeing your account value drop sometimes without panicking, you want a simple low-cost approach. It might not be the right fit if you need your money in the next few years, you genuinely enjoy researching individual companies and want to try stock picking, you can't emotionally handle market volatility, you're looking to get rich quickly. And look, you don't have to choose just one approach. Plenty of people keep most of their money in index funds, but use a small portion to invest in individual stocks they're interested in. That's fine. The important thing is that your core long-term savings is in something solid and diversified. All right, let's wrap this up. Index fund investing isn't glamorous. It's not going to make you feel like a wolf of Wall Street. But for most people, it's probably the smartest way to build wealth over time. You're buying a piece of entire markets, paying very little in fees, and letting time and compound growth do the heavy lifting. You're avoiding the mistake of thinking you can outsmart the market, which very few people can do consistently. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. You don't need to be a financial genius to build wealth. You just need to start. Stay consistent, keep costs low, and be patient. So here's your action step. If you're interested in getting started, open a brokerage account this week. You don't have to invest yet if you're not ready, just get the account set up. Then, when you're comfortable, start with whatever amount makes sense for you, even if it's $25. The important thing is to begin. Thanks so much for listening. If you found this helpful, share it with someone who's also trying to figure out this investing thing. We all started as beginners, and there's no shame in learning. Until next time, invest wisely, stay patient, and remember, simple usually beats complicated. Take care.